Well, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. This is our First Steps to Reopening webinar where Tom Gordon, part of our COVID response team, will take us through a checklist and, of course, a set of concepts to get us all started on that path towards reopening, which is going to be here before we know it, fingers crossed. Here at Missouri Enterprise, we're very cognizant of the disruption caused to Missouri manufacturers as well as manufacturers throughout the country by the current pandemic. As the Show Me State's dedicated MEP center, we are enhancing our resources to help manufacturers weather the storm, as well as seize opportunities that are presented and develop a corporate response plan for your future. Following the presentation, we will open it up for questions. Please use that chat feature. Just if you pull your mouse down a little bit, you'll see that chat. And please just type your questions there, and you can decide if you want to send that to the entire group for everyone to see, or if you just like to send it to the panelists, then Tom can answer those accordingly. If you want to ask a question at the end, you can always email us, or if you want to ask a question later, please feel free to contact us at a different time. In addition to that, I'm going to have a quick poll. I think it's 3 or 4 questions. It should be painless. And that just helps us get a better idea of where you are and where our manufacturing community is in general as far as managing and overcoming some of these challenges. So please stick around for that. Again, it should take maybe 15 seconds for you to take that poll. We really appreciate the input that you'll provide to us. Okay, with that, Tom Gordon, it looks like you're in a beautiful, well-designed kitchen behind you. I'm in a lovely co-working space. That's my virtual background of choice today. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Actually, Amy, I'm sitting on the beach drinking Bahama Mamas. This is the backdrop. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us. This is a very stressful time for all of us, I'm afraid. I hope we'll get through it. As the Queen said, we'll meet again. But if I can just share my screen with you. Yep. Where are we? Okay. So these are our first steps to reopening. I hope that it'll be relatively painless, but please be aware that we are trying, just as you are, to walk through an uncharted jungle. We're trying to create a bridge over troubled water, and we have got a lot of troubled water to bridge over. My heart breaks when I see the news about the queues for food and what have you. It's real troubled water. It's not something that we've ever been used to. And so the COVID team have put together this presentation and also the checklist, which Amy will talk about later, to perhaps help you a bit of a bridge. But I want to tell a salutary tale from the Cuban Missile Crisis. Many of you weren't born then, you know. But there's a marvelous movie called 13 Days. And a clip from the movie, President Kennedy and General Curtis LeMay, who was the head of the Strategic Air Force, SAC. And LeMay says to the president, when Kennedy's trying to figure out what to do about these nuclear-tipped missiles about 20 minutes away from Washington. And LeMay says to the president, well, you're in a very difficult position, Mr. President. And Kennedy looked at him and smiled wryly and said, I don't know if you've noticed, but you are in it with me. And as far as COVID-19 is concerned, we are all in the same boat. And it's a pretty scary boat, actually. So the first steps to reopening. This is not a short-term fix. This is the important thing to remember. The purpose of this introductory webinar is to give you a little bit of guidance about how you're going to recover from the effects of the pandemic. Also, to help you be proactive in the event of a mutation next year. Now, the World Health Organization is talking about things like a new COVID pandemic at the same time as a flu pandemic in winter. And that's really very scary. We've got a plan for this. We also want to introduce the free rebooting checklist for top management. And it is not a very comprehensive checklist as such. It's only a couple of pages. And we have been working, the COVID team has been working on a more extensive checklist, which will allow us to plan for next year. Also, healthcare issues will be addressed in the next seminar, in the next webinar. There's lots of issues there about healthcare. But what I want you to remember is that there's been no medical disturbance on this scale since the Spanish flu 100 years ago. The closest parallel to society working together is what happened in World War II. Do you remember that marvelous poster with that lady who was working in a factory and she's showing off her biceps saying, "We can do it"? And that's the message really we want to send. We can do it. We can get past this. So where are we? I took this from a CDC publication given to me by April Smith, and it kind of indicates where we are. And we're somewhere really within phases 5 and 6, widespread human infection. And then, of course, we've got to be aware that there may be a post-peak. If everybody runs out and we all go partying again, we might even get another peak. So we've got to be sensible. As that wonderful lady from Michigan, the governor of Michigan, said, better to be 6 feet apart than 6 feet under. So this is where we are. Now, I took this from The Economist this week, and this is a graph of some countries in Europe which have been particularly badly hit and what they've been doing. And they've all reached the peak now, and in theory, it's going away. Spain particularly had a very, very bad time, and they appear to be getting over it. So what are some of the considerations we're going to address, and particularly in the checklist? Hygiene, people, restarting the manufacturing process, particularly if they've been down for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. What about our customers? What about our suppliers? And what about our workforce? And as I said, Amy will introduce the reboot or the restart checklist later, which is available free. So, first thing, let's not get blasé about this. Clean all the common areas. Hygiene in the workplace. You know, in a past life, previous life, when I used to do ISO 9003 certifications of companies, the first place I used to go to was the bathrooms on the shop floor. Because if the bathrooms on the shop floor were pigsties, then the company had to produce a lot of sunlight to make me believe that their system was under control. So I think the first thing we've got to do, and as managers, you've got to start with the hygiene. Clean all the common areas. Clean all the mugs that everybody uses. And as Amy pointed out, if you've been chopping up jalapenos for your nachos, you need to take your contact lenses out because you get all kinds of acid or something on your fingers. Personally, I don't chop up jalapenos, but I'll take her word for it. And this is perhaps a good incentive to do something like 5S. Really get organized. It's a lot easier to clean when you are organized. Now, people issues. Everything revolves around people, of course. Reverting to the old norm. Well, people have been off 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. They're starting to get blasé about this. How do we revert to the old norm? Now, one of the things I made myself do when we started working at home is every morning I get up at the same time. Well, actually, I don't. My dogs get me up at 6 o'clock because that's when they want their breakfast. But I get up, shower and shave, put on a shirt as I was going to work. And I think that's something that we've got to encourage. We've got to re-establish the team ethos after isolation. Mr. Barr said it's like being in jail in your own house. And he was right. And many of us feel as though we are in home confinement. We've got to reiterate the safe working practices that may have been forgotten, been overlooked. Security and access control, cyber security. And what about skills that have become rusty because of lack of practice? Particularly computer skills, which we've forgotten about. We've got to rebuild loyalty in these trying times. We've got to make sure that quality is still the focus, the customer requirements. And of course, we've got to be sympathetic, because if the children are not at school, then how can the parents, in good conscience, come to work? One of my neighbours is a high school teacher, and he tells me that they're not going to start this academic year. So if your children are not going to school, what do you do with them? And I hope we're all using leisure time productively. Missouri Enterprise has been very, very, very good at this, very far-sighted. We're all doing food safety classes and other things. We've done a communications course this morning, just to make sure that we're using the leisure time productively. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's a great organization called Future Learn. If you look it up on the internet, they offer a multitude of free courses, all taught by prestigious universities around the world. Everything from learning Norwegian to analysis of data, using our leisure time productively. And it's a good idea to have an employee survey. Make sure that your employees are happy coming back, particularly any disgruntled employees. What are the root causes? Healthcare, mortgage, rent, unemployment benefit, hard cases financially. And we see them every night on the news. People are wondering how they're going to eat. And finally, are we going to weather future storms? How can we build a better boat for the future? And this is the subject of the continuing webinars. So, quality of life. People's work lives have changed. But there's opportunities. In this risk, there is always opportunities. Perhaps a business opportunity for everybody is an accent upon training and education. And can working from home become viable in some cases? And what are the implications there? Well, if you don't have to have offices for everybody, perhaps you could rearrange the place. Hot desking. People can work at home and come into the office. Hot desking. Save a lot of money in real estate. Travel and commuter times. My old father used to say, when we're marching, we're not fighting. Now, I'm finding that I'm starting work, productive work, at least a couple of hours earlier than I used to, because I don't have to drive anywhere. And I'm finishing work, same time, 5:30, 6 o'clock, but I don't have to drive. So we can be much more productive. Now, there's some problems with working at home. Intellectual property issues. Have we got the technology? But one of the things I've found with working from home is focusing more upon achievement and not activity. And by activity, I mean driving all over the place. This can only work in a theory Y type management style, where employees are trusted and employees know that they've got a job to do and they get on with it. If you tend to be a theory X type manager, micromanagement, working from home will not work. So how do we restart the manufacturing process? Bigger the challenge, the bigger the opportunity. But one of the things we've got to do is to make sure that past gains are maintained, whether we're ISO 9001 or AS certified, whether we'll be doing lean, training within the industry, whatever gains we've made, our inventory, is it still accurate? Or have we been doing a sort of ad hoc type things where we just pull things out as we need them? But an important thing that we need to consider is that the processes we can streamline using this experience. Probably as time goes by, we add a lot of unnecessary things, non-value added activity into our business systems. I mean, we've seen a lot of all this, haven't we, with the government checks and everything. And a perennial complaint that people are making is there's too much bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is like a cancer. Well, this is a great opportunity to streamline our processes, dig out that cancer, continuous improvement. And of course, are we forgetting how to use our ERP systems effectively? Maintenance and startup of machines that have been idle. Are we absolutely certain that they'll start up okay? Or are we to do some kind of, preventive maintenance on them? And then an important thing is revising the links between the production plan and the master production schedule. Because we've got to decide what to make first. Have we the materials? We're all expecting a big surge of customer orders when all this nonsense goes away. Well, what do we make first? Can we maintain the discipline? Have we got the materials from our suppliers? Can we maintain inventory and work in progress discipline? And finally, harping on to the subject, revisit lean practices. This is a great opportunity to root out non-value added activity that's infected the business. And all businesses do. It's just entropy. So let's attack entropy. Now, what about our customers? There will in all likelihood be a surge in demand when this crisis is contained. Can we maintain the time-fed discipline that we've established so we know what to make, when to make it? And of course, if sales offer the moon, are we able to deliver it and not deliver green shales? Can the customers meet their accounts payable? Have they got the cash flow? Can we afford to offer extended terms? Can the supply matrix cope in all directions? Because of course it's not a supply chain, it's a matrix. Can it cope in all directions? And what about our suppliers? Now, this is a great opportunity. And for those of you who are very keen on this, you need to talk to Dave Goebel, who is our supplier scout in Missouri Enterprise. David is doing some fantastic work and providing opportunities for reshoring. The disadvantages of offshoring components, materials, are ginormous, and it is not saving money. In fact, when you put in the total cost of ownership, it's actually costing you money to offshore. So let's use this as an opportunity to reshore as much as possible. Now, what about our primary suppliers? Are they still in business? Are their suppliers solid? If you think of the old supply matrix going all the way back to whoever digs the metal out of the ground, is the matrix solid? But what we should do is institute stricter receiving inspection of critical items, just in case. I brought this up a couple of months ago with a client who was receiving stuff from China, actually from Wuhan. And I said, you want to be careful when you're unloading that container because nobody knows how long this virus will last. And will a journey on the high seas actually kill it? Now, one of the things we can do to help is accounts payable days. If you think of the complete supply matrix, if everybody paid on time, that makes the whole matrix a lot more efficient. So do we push out AP? Perhaps that's one of the things we can do to help our suppliers. And what about society? Will our employees come back? You know, before all this nonsense started, it was very difficult to get good people. People were scrabbling around. So what have we done to help these good people, to make sure that they come back? Did we have shared work and family support? What did we do? So, as this virus is a member of the same family as influenza, there's very good chances that it'll mutate next winter or spring. We don't want to be in this boat again. What we've got to do is learn something from this crisis. So we need a roadmap of renewal, and you can start with the Missouri Enterprise Reboot Checklist, which is available free. Amy, can I pass to you, please?
Yes, you can. Okay, thank you for that, Tom. And it may be appropriate as well. I'm going to share my screen here in just a few minutes, but to show you what that checklist looks like. And again, I will be sure to email that to everyone after this. But a little bit about Missouri Enterprise and what makes us unique. I know you probably are all being inundated with emails about steps to take to reopen or recovery responses. And what's great is we're all coming together. You have all these wonderful business organizations working alongside the state and our federal partners wanting to help. But taking a step back, Missouri Enterprise is specifically geared towards manufacturers. That's where we come in. Now, a lot of the information that Tom shared and what I will be sharing following this is applicable to most any business model. But when it gets into the weeds on 5S and lean manufacturing, sourcing materials and whatnot, training your workforce on specific manufacturing processes, that's what makes us unique, is that we want to teach you so that you can fully implement that system into your process and facility. So again, as a result, in response to COVID-19, we have created our COVID-19 response team to assist you and guide you through this. We have a set of experts that have over 300 years combined experience working in manufacturing. I cannot say that they've worked in a similar situation as this, although Tom has many, many stories about some of his experiences when it comes to responding, reacting properly and seizing opportunity. And that's what we want to discuss here. So again, we are your partner in crisis. And go ahead and hit that next slide for me, Tom, if you wouldn't mind. I'm not going to rattle all of these. You can easily go to our website and look through some of these concepts or some of these solutions. What we're doing right now is really trying to take a look nationwide about what the MEP Center and system offers. And what's great about being part of the MEP system is that if we do not have that specific expert that can meet your need or help you solve that specific challenge, all we need to do is tap on the network and we can find someone. I know Tom was just mentioning Dave Goebel. He is dedicated 24/7 now to working one-on-one with manufacturers to help them source materials, source products, connect with hopefully companies in Missouri, but if not, as Tom indicated, working with manufacturers here in the United States, and hopefully setting up some more long-term relationships as a result of that. Again, going through this, I'm not going to go through the entire list here, but we'll follow up with some additional information. You want to go ahead and hit the next slide for me, Tom, that'd be great. Okay, so following this webinar, I will be emailing you the first steps checklist. That right there is just a tiny snapshot of some of the things that we want you to start thinking about. This is a thought-provoking checklist, and again, could really be applicable to any sort of business model. These are the things you should start thinking about. Again, May will be here before we know it. What can you do today to take that step towards reopening? Hopefully this is an aggressive timeline, but we're hoping by the end of next week that we will be launching our preparedness playbook. It's a more robust strategic document to help your company prepare for future disruptions. I'm sure you guys are all following the news as I am, which is that COVID may come back and rear its ugly head again. What does that mean for us? We already know that some of our universities and educational systems are deciding not to open their doors this week. So that is a very likely situation that we'll find ourselves in. So how can we learn from this and prepare for it to come back or another disruption? And then finally, we will also be in tandem launching our readiness recovery assessment. And that's really to have you start thinking, how ready are you? And again, as the screen indicates, this tool helps you identify immediate and long-term needs and solutions to overcome those challenges. Again, like I'm sure you're like me, we're getting tons of emails right now about, hey, try this or try that, try this marketing, try this insurance. All these resources are being thrown at you. How do you kind of cut through some of that red tape, cut through some of the noise, and figure out what you specifically need? And that's what this assessment does. I believe it's maybe 20 or more questions that make up the assessment, and then it'll give you the answers so that you can kind of pinpoint some of those current challenges as well as some challenges you may be facing down the road. Next slide, please. Okay, as we shared, we do have a COVID-19 response team. Tom Gordon, thank you, Tom. We have April Schmidt. She also led an infectious disease planning webinar a few weeks ago that is available on our site, and it's a kind of a natural next step as well if you're looking into what you can do to continue to provide and prevent COVID from spreading in your facility once you do reopen, or if you're already in operations. If you would like that information, I can make sure you receive that, and I'll also put that in that email. And Dave Goebel, he's our supplier scouting lead in that area. Tom, would you mind quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and pull up that checklist just so everyone can see it. And just kind of take us through.
I'll stop my share, okay?
Yeah, that would be great. Stop yours, and I'm gonna pull mine open. All right, nod your head, Tom, if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, so again, seems like it's a lot on here, but this is really an overview of what one would need to consider when reopening. So Tom, kind of take us through how this was developed and what was the thought process?
Well, the thought process was, what can we provide to top management that will allow them to ensure that when the time comes to reopen, then it can be done effectively. Now, Dave Feeling pointed out that the way this is structured is like an Ishikawa diagram, and he was absolutely dead right. And the topics basically follow that sort of structure. Now, one of the things that Dave really put in was we should have a column, if you like, called critical. There's things that you must do now, and there's things that perhaps you can do tomorrow or the day after. And that's the rationale behind the checklist. You just work through it and you decide what you want to do and what is important to your business. So whether it's the people, whether it's restarting production or what it is, you can grade what you need to do today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and work through it to make sure that you've got everything covered. So it goes from suppliers, customers, restarting production, all the way up to cleaning the knives and forks in the break rooms. Amy?
Great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for a brief question and answer. So again, I ask that you use the chat function. If you do not know what that is, just go ahead and pull your mouse down to the ribbon of Zoom. Click on, you'll see the Q&A. You can scroll over to the right and you can type and select if you want everyone to be able to see your question or if just the panelist. Now, I will tell you, we do have a couple of our area business managers. They represent a territory in Missouri, and as we all know, Missouri is one of the most diverse makeups as far as manufacturing, with food, chemicals, steel, rubber, plastics, electronics, you name it, automotive and aerospace suppliers. And so they each kind of provide a different perspective, representing their clients and their community and the manufacturers in their area. So I'm going to go ahead and look at some of these questions. So thank you to our folks down on the floor and area business managers. So Brian Walsh, who's in the St. Louis area, says, will a standard 5S get our manufacturing spaces where they need to be in order to assure our workers that they are safe when they return to the factory floor? So Tom, would you mind answering that question?
That's a good question, Brian. And that's a politician's answer, isn't it? I think if we think of a traditional production line, let's imagine how some of the supermarkets are handling this. They have got plexiglass screens between the customers and the supplier. Well, why shouldn't we put perhaps plexiglass screens between the workplaces? Now, I'm not a safety expert. I don't aim to be, but it seems to me that isolating people, as that lady in Michigan said, better to be 6 feet away than 6 feet under. And unless it's absolutely necessary for people to be right next to each other, there's really no reason why we shouldn't create an environment of social distancing. What do you think, Brian? I mean, you're working in an area in St. Louis, which is really rather scary, to be honest with you.
So Brian would have to type back in and chat.
Oh, sorry.
Go back. That's okay. We had a good one question was, will this recording be available following the presentation? And if you receive my emails or have been on any of our COVID webinar series, you know that I always follow my promise and my word. I will send this to you, so do not fret. You can watch this at a later time if you'd like. Another question was, our company, and this is one that they wanted to pose to everyone, so feel free to write in your chat if this is something your company's doing right now. But are there companies right now that are testing their employees for COVID?
Now, April is going to address this because there's lots of implications there.
Someone says that they are checking temperatures every day on all shifts. So I as well, I've heard that there are companies checking temperatures, and if they're over a certain degree, then they will send them home.
But you've got to remember, was it George Stephanopoulos? He had this disease, but he did not have a temperature. So
good point.
A high temperature is not always a good indicator. There are other indicators.
One symptom, correct.
And April will talk about some of the other indicators in the next session.
So that same, so Melissa said that they are checking temps every day, and we send everyone home if they have any illness, sickness, or if they have been sick. Again, this is something that we have covered in that infectious disease planning webinar, and can share that again to this group so you can review that at your leisure. Another question, is there anything we can start doing now that will make things better if the virus reoccurs in conjunction with traditional flu season? Tom, I don't know if you have any comment on that, but again, that's something that April can cover as well.
Yeah, we certainly can. If we've got a business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans, but this is a very specific thing. Mainly when we discuss business continuity plans like ISO 22301, we're talking about business disruption. We're looking at the risks and the opportunities for business disruption. This is different. You know, this does not know any boundaries. So I think we've got to start thinking out of the box on how we're going to address this. And particularly if there's another tremendous surge in unemployment, what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to survive? So it goes all the way from the politicians all the way down to everybody on the shop floor. What are you doing to make sure we all don't die, you know? Now, we're all in God's waiting room, and you can probably tell I'm nearer the door than some of you. But the fact of the matter is, we don't need to die of COVID-19, if we're sensible. Amy?
We had a comment from our restaurant delivers to factories, and some are temping our drivers upon entering the parking lot, is what I saw. And again, I think, again, that's using your discretion, but as Tom just stated, you can be carrying or have the virus and not have that specific symptom. So something else to keep in mind.
And I think it's great if you're using restaurants to provide lunches and what have you for your people, because, we all have to keep going. But again, why can't you have a receiving point at the entrance to the building? People don't have to come in. We could have one designated person who picks up the food.
So kind of limiting that exposure.
Yeah,
right?
Limiting exposure.
Melissa, again, thank you. We're asking all visitors if they have been sick in the last 72 hours before letting them in the building. Now, I know the checklist did have a space on there about visitors. Tell us kind of the thought concept behind that, Tom.
Well, how necessary is it for visitors to come into your facility? Now, under the term visitors, what we're talking about, delivery drivers, pickup drivers, customers, suppliers. There's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't maintain the social distances. The customer comes in, or a supplier comes in. I mean, a supplier doesn't have to huddle up with your people to see how you inspect their product. The customer doesn't have to huddle up with your people to see that their product is coming off the line and is being packed and checked and all that sort of stuff. So we don't have to be that close. And what was it? Conan, the comedian, it was advertising his show. He was talking about keeping 4 people distant. I can't remember the name of the comedian. And he had this statue or a cutout, and he was laying it on the ground. This is how you keep away from people. You don't have to be really up to people. And then, if you are visiting a plant, why not wear a mask? Why not wear gloves?
Be sure to change your gloves.
And be sure to change your gloves, absolutely. It's rather sad. Before this started, I noticed my wife had bought a pack of 100 rubber gloves. This was, last year for handling our dogs. And it cost $4. Trying to get the same thing today, she spent something like $80. So we need to remember who's been gouging things when the good times come back again.
So we had a question asking, thank you, Tom, if the checklist would be available, and yes, you will receive the email of this recording as well as the checklist. Someone wanted to know if some of the checklist would apply to the tourism industry, any other industries outside of manufacturing as far as best practices.
Good point. We are, our focus really is on manufacturing. But yeah, some of the points in the checklist, getting a plan. How do you get people back to work? How do you treat the people? All this sort of stuff is just applicable to the tourist industries, the legal industry, the accounting industry. In fact, it's probably a lot more applicable to service industries when I think about it, because the service industry is much more people-to-people interaction than perhaps we have in manufacturing. At least in manufacturing, we can keep away from people if we have to. So yes, it is applicable.
Great. Janet Lockridge asked, will companies provide any return to work onboarding classes to ensure employees are aware of new policies or work practices? And again, I think that gets back to Tom, if I can say, communications, having that communications plan in place on what you're going to say, but also if there's certain tasks or duties that you may deem as non-essential, or that you can really inspire some more cross-training. Is that applicable in this situation.
Oh, I think so, yeah. Well, what a great opportunity for cross-training. You know, if a particular task is regarded as non-essential, then the people who are doing that task, let's train them in something that is essential. You know, cross-training is probably the lifeblood of a good factory, a good manufacturing, or any kind of industry. None of us know when the man in the hood is going to come and chop our heads off with a scythe. So cross-training, you know, being cynical about it, it means that if you do drop dead, there's somebody who can actually do your job. And loyal employees must feel that the business has got to carry on even if they're not there. And that's one of the benefits of cross-training.
Yes. I'm continue asking the questions. I'm going to go ahead and have this poll up because we do see some folks dropping off. So please stay on the line. It just takes a few seconds here. I'm going to launch this poll. You can just add your answer live there, right there. I'm going to continue to move forward with these other questions. And to follow up on Janet, we will, if there's a certain onboarding process or policy that you would need additional assistance on, that is where our COVID response team is here to help you. So
Yeah.
Even though we only had those 3 folks listed there, we have 9 experts on the team that can dedicate their time towards helping you work towards a policy or how to train those employees on an onboarding process. So yes, that is something that we can do, absolutely. And we'll make sure, Janet, that someone reaches out to you on that. Another question about, safety director responsibility. And I know that is something that is more thoroughly explained in the preparedness playbook. It's not only, it covers command and control, contain, assess risk, mitigate, implement, and monitor report. And you'll see on there, it's not only, hey, we need someone to have that responsibility. Really, what is that position? Perhaps this is creating the response is to create a position, safety director responsibility. So Brent, James, I hope I answered that. Tom, do you have more to add to that?
I think it's probably a good idea to create or to use this crisis as an excuse to, not an excuse, a good reason, a good business reason to create a safety professional post, because nobody goes to work to get hurt, let's face it. And the role of the safety people in manufacturing is really paramount.
Evan, thank you for your suggestion. I appreciate that about allowing them to select multiple options on our question 4 especially. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of quickly go through some of these answers with you all to let you know what the polling results are. Thank you. 97% of you indicated that this was helpful, so we appreciate that. That's why we're here, is to respond to your needs. That's why we are Missouri's MEP Center. Are you ready to reopen if you are not currently in operation? And this is a great answer. 49% said yes. So we'd rather, that makes us feel good, as opposed to the 13% said no and 40% said somewhat ready. Hey, that's okay. Again, we're in this together. We know that May is, a little over a week away, but that we can move mountains, right, Tom? We can help you.
We most certainly can.
Yeah, for 48% of you to say that you are ready to open, that gives us great ease. Do you plan to use the checklist? 83% said yes. We had no no's, and we had 17% of you said maybe, so that's great. And again, we'd love to hear your feedback after you take a look at that checklist, what we can do to perfect it. Current challenges that you're facing that would make it difficult to reopen. So I would say at this point, the number 1 cause is understanding health and wellness guidelines. We know that this is just a myriad of all kinds of, information coming at you. And we have a really good resource on staff, April Schmidt. But in addition to that, we're working with an infectious disease doctor, Dr. Lang, who has been incredible answering questions for our manufacturing community. So if you have those questions, please work with us, and we can help you, again, design what that infectious disease plan as well as wellness process would look like, taking into consideration all of the wellness guidelines, and making sure that you remain protected. There's some things out there that we don't have the answers to, and that's where we would all need to kind of call on some legal guidance as well, but we will do the best that we can with the information we have.
Okay.
And that's why the network is really helpful as well. We can look at other models that are working in other states.
You don't have anything else. I'm gonna hang up and try to figure out.
Do we think that this could change OSHA requirements for worker safety? Great question.
All right, well, obviously, excellent.
Well, I'm afraid I'm not qualified to answer that, but I wouldn't be at all surprised.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time we've ever been in this situation where everything has just come, to a halt. So I think not only OSHA, but you're going to have a lot of possible programs and departments out there, government-wise, thinking, what are we going to do next time? I guarantee there will be some task force that will be created as a result of this to figure out what parts of the law apply, which ones need to be modified. I know that our legislature here, they're also working on that. The governor's working on executive orders to see what they can do. There's other states that are helping manufacturers with good faith legislation, manufacturers that want to make, for instance, PPEs for the medical supply community, and they're a little worried about liability. So there are states that are passing good faith laws to protect them. So that's a good question about OSHA. I do not know that personally. We do work closely with the state labor department, and that is certainly a question I can ask them. They are that, where the rubber meets the road, that kind of first contact that works with OSHA, and that's the safety department at Department of Labor. So Eric, I can get back with you on that. Good question. Okay. I think we are, let's see, I may have a couple other questions here. This is our last question. Are there elements of business continuity and disaster planning that can apply to COVID-19 response? And I think that's an overwhelming yes, but Tom, you're the expert.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with ISO 22301, which is the business continuity management framework, but it can fit into that framework. But as I said, this is pretty unique. So we've got to start thinking about thinking outside the box for next year when this comes again. But business continuity management and disaster recovery is generally focused on our physical stuff and not on the virus that can be spread around. So I think we have got to start thinking outside the box and what we're going to do in winter if the dire predictions of the World Health Organization come to pass. I mean, if we do have COVID and flu at the same time, I tell you, quite a few of us won't be here next year, probably including me.
Let's not think that way. Come on, positivity. All right. Well, we really want to thank Tom for putting this together. Thank our COVID response team. Again, our folks are working tirelessly. I know I get emails at 11 p.m. at night and really early in the morning, and that's okay. A couple other notes I wanted to mention for you that are still on here. Yesterday, the governor's office issued a manufacturing marketplace, which allows you to create a profile and submit, if you are making PPEs. I hope it perks your ear up a little bit, but they did launch that yesterday with Google technology. So if you are not part of our COVID manufacturing network, I will make sure that's in the email as well. Please join that so that we can make sure you get information like this. Things are rapidly changing. And so we want to make sure you have that most up-to-date information. And again, that will be offered through the Department of Economic Development. And NAM and AIM, Associated Industries of Missouri, recently created a similar source. And I know, again, there's like all these different things happening. Which one do you go to? If you are posed with that question, you don't know which one to go to, put your information on all the platforms. That's the thing. Use them all. If there's a federal platform or a state or a business organization, there is absolutely no harm in putting your information out there, because you never know if a nursing home may be bottom of the list to get those PPEs, and you may be there to fill it. So I encourage all of you to place your information there. So thank you again. Please join us tomorrow. We have a little selfish plug here. Marketing tools for manufacturers. That is tomorrow at 1 p.m. You just go to missourienterprise.org/events or click on the events page. And that's just a brief webinar on what manufacturing tool or marketing tools can you use now that are free. We know oftentimes, and I can tell you this as well, whenever budgets are in a bind, marketing is often the first thing to go. And that is a big mistake to do that when you need to communicate more than ever right now. If you are open, if you plan to open, what are you doing? You need to really communicate to your customers what services and products you have now or what you plan to do. Have them join your mailing list. How do you appear on Google search, Google My Business? So those are just a few tools that we're going to go over tomorrow. Again, it's 30 minutes, I believe, is the whole webinar at 1 o'clock. I hope to see you all there. Thank you. Have a great rest of your Thursday, Tom. Thank you very much. And
thank you, folks.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.